Good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are on our beautiful blue planet Earth. Coming live to you from my home in beautiful Washington State. I know what you're wondering right now. You're probably thinking, you know what, he's got a nice shirt on, the background looks okay, but does he have any pants on? Well, I can assure you that I do have my pants on. So, but at any rate, I just want to welcome you to today's presentation. My name is Habib Haydarian, and I'm a program manager on the team. And today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to spend some time talking about the idea around customer experience and customer engagements. And really here, we're going to start off by talking about what is happening as far as the transformation of customer experience is concerned. It's a term that's been bandied around a lot, but really what I hope to do today is make that concrete for you and leave you not only informed, but also inspired at the end of this presentation. And the way I'm going to take us through this journey is by showing you the power of Dynamics 365 Marketing, where the app uses data as its core artifact to be able to not only create, but also automate and execute customer engagement experiences. And so what I'd like to do then is show you how the marketing app fits with the rest of the set of customer engagement blades in Dynamics 365 Marketing. And towards the end, my colleague John is going to join me. We're going to try and answer some questions, but don't fear. We have a number of Connect the Expert sessions lined up for this afternoon, and I'll share some more details about that later on. So let's get started. One of the things that's actually amazing when it comes to this idea of digital transformation is that it's not just, old industries, whether, you are a brick and mortar shop or perhaps a retail store. Marketing itself is actually going through a pretty transformational change as we speak right now. And there are really two reasons why that's happening. The first one is just about everything is being commoditized. What I mean by that is, if you recall, perhaps 50 years ago, really, we talked about extracting or harvesting commodities. We used things like the ability to be able to not only extract, but transport the goods. And after a while, what happened was that those ingredients, so to speak, they turn into products and services. But ultimately, what's happened, especially I'd say in the last 10 years with the advent of certainly cell phones, but also IoT in general, what we're seeing is that this seismic shift from, I have a product or a service to, no, I need to be able to actually surround that product or service into this 360 customer experience so that I can differentiate my offerings. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, there are at least 100 other e-commerce sites on the web that are ready and able to take my business, so to speak. And what is causing all that is just this incredible amount of data that's been generated. The data is being generated from people, places, events, as well as things. And so you probably heard the stats. There are bajillions of things nowadays sit around that both collect as well as produce signals. And all that needs to be taken into account when you're trying to create this end-to-end customer experience. And so fundamentally what is happening is that, data, AI, as well as this ubiquitous connectivity, especially with things like 5G coming up soon, this is going to get even essentially more exacerbated as companies, organizations, and departments get inundated with incredible amounts of data. And the idea here is that how do you make that data actionable to provide this smooth, seamless, integrated 360 customer experience? Let's start with actually the customer. One of the things that always strikes me is when I think about the customer, it really isn't just me imagining them. I really try and think about, if I was a customer, how do I see the world? And what's fascinating here is that when you think about it, the customer really has a different lens on than, let's say, a business or an organization. The customer really starts with the me or the self. They're obviously motivated by their fears and their wants and their needs. And then that's ultimately driven or encapsulated in sort of experiences. So my reality as a customer is fundamentally defined by the sort of experiences that I have. Now, the products and the services that I engage with obviously are also influenced by the companies that I engage with, but fundamentally, my experiences define how I see the world, and in turn, they define how I see the products, services, and engagements that I see from various companies. But what is interesting now is that let's actually shift that over. Imagine now, instead of you being the customer, you're a business. And so if you go from right to left now, from a company's perspective, the company DNA, essentially your core values, define who the company is. And ultimately, through that definition, the business is driven, as well as ultimately the engagements are defined and executed on. But you can probably see already that the way that I view the world through my products and services are actually fundamentally different in regards to how customers see the world. So I see the world through how I engage the customers, through what I want to say or what I want to engage on or what I'm selling. But the customer is saying, no, it's about me and my wants. So there is this disconnect between what the customer sees and what the actual corporation or company sees. So this is actually a really good summary of where the disconnect is happening. So the tone deaf emails that you sometimes get, or the massive amounts of spam, or in your direct mail, probably in your mailbox right now, those things are a direct result of companies and corporations just fundamentally not understanding who the customers are, what drives them, but more importantly, what it is that they can do to motivate the customer in a way that's respectable and respectful, so that the customer feels like they can establish a trust element with the company. And so those two worlds, the customer world and the company's world, are basically stitched together by having a deep understanding of the customer, but also at the same time be able to take that deep understanding, be able to engage the customers on that. And this is where Dynamics 365 Marketing comes in. You probably noticed, I've essentially used, CX, the power of data. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, I can convince you that is actually the reality. When people think about data, they typically have perhaps a linear aggregation or some kind of multiplication. But really, when it comes to Dynamics 365 Marketing, because of the rich ecosystem that marketing is in, including the other customer engagement apps, we are able to not only send out signals, engage with the customers, but the product is able to now take all that information in and be able to create a much better, smoother, and fine-tuned experience. And so fundamentally, what the Dynamics marketing part is about is the ability to be able to personalize the engagements based on data. And so, I'm sure you've once in a while received emails where it just starts with hi, where there is no greeting. It's very clear from the tone of the email, starting from the subject line, that the person who's trying to engage you really doesn't know who you are. And immediately, if you look at the stats, that throws off red flags in the customer's minds, where they're not even interested in opening the mail. And this is where, in fact, if you look at the stats, there's a wide disparity between email click rates and email open rates. And that directly speaks to things like, is the subject line personalized in a way that I can identify with what it is that the company or the corporation is trying to engage me on. But I'd say one of the key elements of marketing also is the fact that it actually grows up with you and with your needs. So you can imagine today you may have a marketing automation solution, or you may not have one. The really nice things about the marketing product is the fact that it grows up with you. So if you have a nascent practice today, you can start with marketing and then grow that up as the platform itself grows. There are some sort of principles / pillars when it comes to customer engagement. You can imagine if you were to take customer engagement to its nth degree, this is where essentially things like respecting people's privacies and being able to make sure that the customer is always in charge of their data coming in. So I'm going to highlight what I consider to be the 4 most important pillars of any customer engagement. The first one starts with personalization. What that really means is the fact that Not only are you starting with things like personal greeting, where you may use demographic data like a person's name. So in this case, contact.first name. But what you really want to do is you want to pull in those engagements that you've had from the past. So if the customer has engaged with you in the past on a purchase or perhaps a newsletter or an event, what you want to be able to do is now you want to be able to go back to those events, pull that information out and say, for example, hi, Habib, it was great meeting you at event X, Y, and Z. And immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? These folks actually know me, and they're trying to provide an experience for me based on what my current context is. Also, the other thing that it's really important is the fact that when it comes to engagement, it's not simply enough to have a personalized engagement. It's also important to have that engagement be both in context, both in time, as well as the actual overall experience. And here's what I mean. Imagine now you are dealing with perhaps some kind of emergency with your insurance company. So with the insurance company, obviously, you're sad and upset. There's obviously potentially impact to your family, and it's not the time now where the insurance company should reach out to you with some kind of happy moment where they're trying to perhaps upsell you, cross-sell you on the next or the existing products. At that point, you probably will start to have a pretty negative impression where what you really want is someone from the customer service team to reach out to you and be able to provide you that peace of mind that everything's going to be okay. And so by simply delaying that moment of reaching out to you, what you can do now is you can still go and do that cross-selling or upselling, but you're simply shifting it from this tone-deaf moment to down to the customer service experience. Now imagine the insurance company, after they processed my claim, and as part of the survey that I just sent out, they might say, hey, Habib, we've noticed that you already have 2 policies with us. If you were to change to this other policy or be able to add perhaps your insurance on your boat, you'll be able to save a lot of money. Now that is an in-moment customer engagement that I, as a customer, would absolutely resonate with. The other thing that's really important is to be respectful. What I mean by that is actually 2 things. To state the obvious with things like GDPR and other data protection policies that are being enacted on as we speak, it's really important to be in tune with not what the customer is thinking or saying, but it's also from a business, there are actually steep stipulation when it comes to things like fines. So I, as a marketer, want to have peace of mind so that it doesn't matter which geography, which region, which customer I'm dealing with. I always feel like the marketing part is taking care of me. And at any one time, if I have to pull up a compliance report, I can simply go and essentially get that report from marketing and be able to show it or prove it to someone. At the same time, from a customer perspective, I want to know that you're respecting my privacy and my data. And this is where features such as the double opt-in that we provide or the subscription center that we provide are incredibly helpful for putting the customer's mind at ease, such that when they engage with you, it's no longer about trust. It's about, let's talk about your next product. Let's talk about your next activity or event. And last but not least, also when it comes to being respectful, it is incredibly important to be inclusive, such that, for example, if you're sending an email to your audience who may have people who may be visually impaired, what you want to do is you want to make sure things like color contrast, font size, and things like that are all taken care of. And in fact, the marketing tool allows you to do exactly that, whereas you're authoring the email itself, there's actually a checker that tells you, hey, we've noticed that you use the color magenta or cyan in your email. Those colors are not best when it comes to visually impaired people. Please go ahead and change them. And there's actually a tool that checks over and over again. So you always feel like you're compliant, both in terms of customers' privacy, as well as how you engage them and making sure that you're in tune with things like perhaps their disabilities. Last but not least, I can't stress enough, when it comes to customer engagement, it's all about relationships. It is not a transactional action where, for example, I send you one email and it's done. It needs to be a point where I'm constantly essentially offering you products and services that are in tune with what it is that you're doing in your stages of life. I'll give you an example. If you had children 6 years ago and you're still getting vouchers for diapers, that seems a little bit tone deaf to me, frankly, where, the customer should have realized that, you know what, your children have moved on and they're much older and they don't need diapers. But frankly, if you were to peruse your promotional emails right now, and I'll actually encourage you to do that as well, it's incredible the number of context insensitive communication that's currently in email, and which basically results in spam. So on the marketer side, they've done a ton of work to create that content. And on the consumer side, frankly, there is no motivation to even click on an email, let alone open one. Okay, so what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to try and bring this to life. I'm going to try and focus around not only how do you go and take that customer understanding and activate that data so that you can reach customers wherever they are and whatever they are doing, but also I want to show how you take that customer understanding, you leverage it for your customer engagements, but more importantly, you as a business, you want to ultimately turn it into business value, because ultimately the goal here is that it is a value for value conversation, meaning as a company, I've respected the customer's privacy, I've made sure that my emails are not tone deaf. In return, the customer has now trusted me with their relationship, with responding back to me, and now I want to be able to monetize that in a respectful way. So let's now look at how I do that in the latest version of Dynamics 365 Marketing. Before I do that, though, let's talk about context. So I've chosen here a fictitious company. It's called Orion Bikes. Obviously, it's called Orion because it's after the constellation Orion. But here, the point is not necessarily about the customer themselves, but this is actually a real-world retail scenario. So imagine now I am a marketing manager at Orion Bikes, and what I really want to do is I want to be able to leverage the breadth of apps in Dynamics 365 to be able to provide this seamless, beautiful, fine-tuned experience for my customers. The first thing that goes through my mind as a marketing manager is, where do I start? And this is where something like a storyboard really, really helps. The storyboard always starts with, what is my goal? The goal is somehow related to a business. It may be around loyalty. It may be around retention, churn, any of those metrics or KPIs that allow me to measure things like revenue, adoption or satisfaction, things like CSAT, NSAT, any of those metrics that I'm trying to essentially either improve, or if it's a negative KPI, I actually want to decrease. My goal always starts with one of those KPIs. So as a market manager, my goal here is I want to launch a premium bike targeted at my high value customers. Now, when you think about it, that makes perfect sense, because if the new bike that I'm launching, let's say it's a brand new brand called the X Factor bike, and it's really a premium bike, what I want to do is I want to be able to engage those customers that to me represent the highest value customers, because most likely they're the ones that are best suited and situated to be able to make that purchase. So the first part of my journey, so to speak, starts with the who. So the who simply defines who the audience is. So in this case, I want to say, give me all the folks that are considered to be high value customers. Once I have that list, the next obvious option is what? What do I actually want to tell the folks? And here, obviously, since I have a new product launch called the X Factor bike, I want to be able to use that as the key content driver. So whether if it's my graphics, whether if it's the tone of my emails, whether if it's the things like my Twitter handle, as well as my Snapchat and other things, those are all configurable in one place in my journey, so I can orchestrate no matter what the channel is and no matter who the customer is. Once I've taken care of defining what the content is, the last step really is, how do I go ahead and engage customers right now? And this is where it gets really exciting, because with Dynamics 365 Marketing, we have a singly integrated customer journey experience where you can orchestrate across emails, SMS messages, events, and even we have deep integration with Forms Pro. So what you can do, for example, is if you're trying to set up an event, let's say you want to have a bike on a weekend event where you want to have your loyal customers come over with their existing bikes, you set up some kind of race, but at the same time, you have a tent set up where they can come and check out the new X-Factor bike. Those kind of events where it comes to a product showcase are incredibly common. So here, being able to tie the physical world around my event management to my digital world where I'm trying to entice people to come and learn about my new product are incredibly useful to bridging that experience gap that I mentioned at the beginning, where customers and the corporations see different things. So let's actually go and see what that looks like in the tool. If you remember, the first thing that I mentioned is it all starts with customer understanding. This is where customer insights represents this incredibly valuable tool that essentially I like to refer to customer insights as customer data with brains, because not only does it allow me to consolidate and refine my data, but it also, through things like AI-enabled segmentation, it allows me to actually be able to not worry about how do I think about segmentation. It simply offers me up simple segments that I can incorporate into marketing and activate. So as you can see on my screen, I have a number of segments that are defined in customer insights. And the one that I'm interested in is this high value customers. And in fact, what I've done previously is to make sure that there's a connection between customer insights and marketing. I've gone ahead and set up an export destination. An export destination simply represents the app or the data store that you want to have integration with. And if I were to go to my export destinations, you'll notice on the last entry that I've set up a connector called X-Factor Bikes Marketing. That clearly tells me that there is now a connection between customer insights and marketing. And now let me actually switch over to the marketing team and let's walk through how do I go about activating that data right now. The first thing that should catch your eye is this link right here. You'll notice it's actually the exact same URL that you saw in the previous customer insights app. So I, as a marketer, can immediately see that this segment now comes from a customer insight. And what this allows me to do is I know with a lot of confidence that because in customer insights, let's say my data science team was able to bring together this rich demographic, firmographic, as well as behavioral data, the segment that I'm about to act on, it really represents a deep customer understanding as opposed to me making up segment based on some anecdotal data or based on my opinion. So again, we're using data to drive the marketing experience from the get-go, and so that experience flows all the way through the customer experience. So now that I've defined my segment, I'm guessing the next question that's on your mind is, so what do I do with this segment? How is it useful? This is where our customer journey comes in incredibly handy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this so it's easier for everyone in the audience to see. The customer journey is, think of it as a manifestation of that tiny storyboard that I showed, where I defined the who, I defined the what, and I defined the where, basically. Now, using this really nice, beautiful integrated UI, I can go and actually make that happen. So here, segment is just a fancy word for the audience or the who. And you can see it's actually the same high value customers that came over from customer insights. So I didn't have to do any actual work or thinking. It's all integrated in the same experience. The next thing is I want to actually be able to send these rich, beautiful emails. And so with Dynamics 365 Marketing, that is all integrated where I can go ahead and create not only the email itself, but I can actually go and set up an event as part of my X-Factor product launch so that I can now tie up this physical and this virtual world, so to speak, where with my fully integrated event management solution in marketing, I can also essentially meet the customers where they are. So one of the things that I'm thinking as my next step is, as a marketing manager, I might actually set up essentially a bus tour around the country where I'm going to visit all 50 states. And to really showcase the product, I want to set up this just-in-time booth, so to speak. The event management solution is the perfect case for something like that, where things like automatic QR codes allow you to completely automate the engagement, the event management experience. So now that I've defined the who, and I've actually defined the artifact, let's go and double click and see what this marketing email actually looks like. Immediately, a couple of things might pop out at you. The first one is you notice that I mentioned previously that data forms the backbone of marketing. Notice instead of using a hard-coded value like Habib, I'm actually using the intelligence and the data that comes in Dynamics 365 platform. So the same contact information that's in the common data service, it's available to me that I can segment on, I can query on, but also the same sort of tools are available to me, but I'm trying to do things like A/B testing. I'm trying to test out whether if it's better to have an impersonal greeting where it just says, hey, introducing the new Orion X Factor bike, or is it better for me to actually start with this really rich personalized message? Something like, Habib, check out the new X Factor bike. Research shows, and I've seen the data, if you start your emails with this personalized kind of in-tune message, not only the click rate, but also the open rate goes up significantly. So immediately we are adding value, but making sure that the customers can not only see your emails, but they can also go ahead and open it. And so here you can see that I can incorporate this rich, beautiful UI, but at the same time, I also have access to things like HTML, where I can look at perhaps if I need to tweak some of the underlying code, perhaps with formatting, or perhaps add some additional JavaScript. But also I can preview that information, which allows me to then not only be confident that I've authored the email, but I feel really good that before I click that send button, it looks great on the customer screen, no matter if it's an iPhone screen or a 24-inch display on someone's desktop. So what I've done at this point is that, let's actually back out a little bit. So I used customer insights as my engine for customer understanding. Then I want to connect a segment in customer insights to my marketing instance. And what I started to do is I started to activate that information. I first created a journey, then I used essentially the segment that I exported from customer insights. And now I'm going to essentially really try and figure out how I can engage my customers through this deeply rich, personalized customer experience. So now that I've created the email, I can now set up essentially a scheduler. And one of the really nice things about the product that we have is, as part of the when, we also have this smart scheduler. This is where really our AI capabilities start to shine in. I'm proud to say that we have one of the we have an embarrassment of riches, so to speak, when it comes to our AI talent, and we're actually leveraging that to do things like, can we do automatic scheduling? So imagine now, rather than having a scheduler where I have to think about what is the most optimal moment, the AI engine actually goes and uses smart scheduling and actually monitors when the user continues to open their email, and then the scheduler starts to fine-tune the delivery to essentially be able to deliver at the right moment, at the right time to the customer. So immediately you've started to reduce that tone-deaf experience. The other thing that we have with all of our emails is the ability to actually expire emails. So imagine how many times it's happened where some event like your birthday or Christmas has already come and by, you're still getting email to do with Christmas. Well, with our email expiration feature, you can actually turn that on and specify, I don't want this email to go out after this exact date. Again, we're preventing you from sending out tone-deaf messages. The other thing that we can do here is that really melt together the lead creation experience. So I can actually, you can see this node right here. If the user went ahead and downloaded the brochure for the X Factor bike, I can immediately create a lead off of that. Not only that, I can actually go and send a follow-up message to make sure that nurturing continues and the customer really starts to understand what the value proposition is, what it is that we're trying to deliver. And the other thing, as I mentioned, is we provide full support for text messages. So nowadays, especially with things like delivery time, imagine now I can tie the delivery of that beautiful X Factor bike to someone's text messages. So I can make sure that before the delivery arrives at someone's home, that is now fully integrated. And I can follow up with like, hey, Habib, we just delivered your brand new shiny bike. What was your experience like? Then I can move on to a text message. So it's this deep integrated experience that's fully encapsulated into a single customer journey. Last but not least, we also have the experience that we have full integration with Forms Pro. And since I'm running out of time, the thing I want to just leave you with is that I know we didn't get too many questions, but if you get a chance, please do come and see us at the Expert Connect this afternoon. Thank you very much and have a pleasant day.